Quick heads up before we get started. I'm not a doctor, and nothing in this show is medical advice. Always talk to your own physician before starting anything new, especially if you're pregnant, nursing, or on medication. Okay, let's get into it. You see one bottle that says 1,000 IU. Another one says 2,000. Another says 5,000. And then, because the supplement aisle enjoys chaos, there is a bottle sitting there with 10,000 IU on the front. So the obvious question is, how much vitamin D should you actually take? I wish that had a clean, universal answer, because honestly, that would make this episode very short and very convenient. But vitamin D is one of those things where the real answer starts with, well, it depends, which is annoying but also true. Because this is not only about the bottle, it is about how much sun you get, whether you have had a blood test, what season it is, where you live, what else you are taking, and sometimes whether there is a medication or a health condition in the background that changes the whole conversation. So today, we are not doing the internet thing where someone throws out a giant number and calls it confidence. We are going to make the question more useful. What vitamin D actually does, why deficiency gets talked about so much, what D3 and D2 mean on a label, why sunlight helps but does not solve the whole thing, and how to think about those dose numbers before you add another capsule to your stack. Let's stack it up. Welcome back to the Stack Genius Show. I'm Morgan. Today is a deep dive on vitamin D. But really, this is a deep dive on one very normal shopper question. How much vitamin D should I take? That is the search. That is the bottle aisle panic. That is the moment where a person sees 4 different doses and thinks, okay, either one of these is right, or none of us know what we are doing. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Vitamin D is important. Deficiency can matter. And supplements can be useful. But vitamin D is also one of those places where people can get a little too confident, a little too fast. So I want to set the boundary early. I am not going to prescribe your personal dose. A podcast cannot do that. Your dose depends on your blood level, your age, your sun exposure, your diet, your health history, your medications, and sometimes a clinician's plan. What I can do is help you understand the question, because once you understand the question, the shelf gets less weird. Not completely normal, because it is still the supplement shelf, but less weird. Let's start with what vitamin D is doing in the body. Vitamin D gets called a vitamin, but biologically it acts more like a hormone precursor. That phrase sounds like something from a textbook that did not want you to have a relaxing afternoon. So let me translate. Your body uses vitamin D to help regulate important systems. The classic role is calcium absorption and bone health. Vitamin D helps your body absorb calcium, and calcium is central to building and maintaining bones, which is why vitamin D deficiency has historically been tied to bone problems, and why it shows up in conversations around aging, bone density, kids, and people who are at higher risk for low levels. Vitamin D also comes up around muscle function and immune function, and those are real areas of biology. But this is where we need to slow down a little. There is a big difference between saying vitamin D is involved in normal immune function and saying a supplement will protect you from getting sick. There is also a big difference between saying vitamin D matters for muscle function and saying one capsule turns your body into a sports car, which, sadly, is not how bodies work. The useful version is that vitamin D status matters. It is part of normal body function, and if someone is low, correcting that may matter for them. But vitamin D is not a magic wellness button, and that is the line we are going to keep walking. Vitamin D gets more attention than a lot of nutrients because low levels are common enough that many people have heard about them from a doctor, a friend, a blood test, or the internet. One reason is simple. Your body can make vitamin D when skin is exposed to sunlight. That is unusual. Most vitamins are mostly food questions, but vitamin D is partly a sunlight question. The tricky part is that sunlight is not a clean variable. A person in Arizona in July is not having the same vitamin D life as someone in Seattle in January. Someone who works outside is not the same as someone who works indoors all day. Skin tone, age, sunscreen, time of day, clothing, cloud cover, and how much skin is actually exposed can all change the picture. And some people have very good skin health reasons for not treating sun exposure like a supplement plan. So when someone says, just go outside, I get the spirit of it, but it is not a complete answer. Some people can maintain healthy vitamin D levels with their normal sun exposure and diet, and some cannot. Some people have medical situations that change the conversation, and some people are low without getting a dramatic warning sign. That is why testing comes up so often. If you search around vitamin D, you will run into symptom lists almost immediately, and I understand why. People want to know whether their fatigue is vitamin D, whether their mood is vitamin D, whether their sore muscles are vitamin D, or whether their hair, skin, immune system, and entire personality are somehow a vitamin D issue. The internet loves that kind of question, but symptoms are messy. Low vitamin D can be associated with things like bone pain, muscle weakness, and fatigue in some contexts. But fatigue by itself is not a vitamin D diagnosis. Fatigue can be sleep, iron, thyroid, stress, undereating, overtraining, medication effects, a medical condition, or just life handing you a week that requires 3 extra versions of yourself. So, no, I would not diagnose vitamin D status from vibes. The blood test people usually talk about is called 25-hydroxy vitamin D. You may see it written as 25-OH vitamin D, and that test gives a clinician a much better picture than guessing from symptoms, TikTok comments, or how emotionally betrayed you feel by February. If a test shows you are low, that is a different conversation from a person who just saw a high-dose bottle and thought, maybe bigger number equals better life. Most of the time, bigger number does not equal better life. It just equals a bigger number. Now we get to the part people actually came for, the dose. Vitamin D supplements often come in amounts like 1,000 IU, 2,000 IU, 5,000 IU, or 10,000 IU. You may also see micrograms, which adds another layer of label math that absolutely nobody asked for. For vitamin D, 1 microgram equals 40 IU, so 25 micrograms is 1,000 IU, and 50 micrograms is 2,000 IU. That is useful to know because 2 bottles can look different while describing the same amount in different units. But the bigger issue is not the conversion. The bigger issue is why the person is taking it. Someone who is trying to maintain a normal intake is not in the same situation as someone with a diagnosed deficiency, and someone with a diagnosed deficiency is not in the same situation as someone guessing based on a winter mood and a YouTube thumbnail. If your clinician tells you to take a specific dose for a specific period of time and follow up with testing, that is one lane. If you are buying a random high-dose supplement because the internet made low vitamin D sound like the root cause of every inconvenience in your life, that is a very different lane, with a different risk level and a different need for supervision. Let's talk about 10,000 IU for a second, because people search for it. I am not saying 10,000 IU is never used. High-dose vitamin D can show up in medical plans, especially around deficiency correction. But that is the key phrase: medical plans. If a high dose is being used, the questions should be why this dose, for how long, based on what test, with what follow-up, and with what safety context. That is not overthinking it. That is the difference between a plan and a guess. Vitamin D is fat-soluble, so your body handles it differently from something like vitamin C. You do not just take unlimited extra, pee out the excess, and move on with your day like nothing happened. Too much vitamin D can raise calcium too high, and high calcium can become serious. In severe cases, that can show up as nausea, vomiting, weakness, confusion, dehydration, kidney stones, kidney injury, or heart rhythm problems. That does not mean ordinary vitamin D use is scary. I do not want to turn this into a horror movie about a soft gel. It just means casual high-dose vitamin D is not something to treat like a harmless experiment. The risk conversation matters more if someone has kidney disease, a history of kidney stones, high calcium, parathyroid issues, certain medical conditions, or medications that affect calcium or vitamin D metabolism. It also matters if someone is pregnant or nursing, or if the supplement is for a child. That is clinician territory, not Morgan guessed based on the biggest number at Costco territory. There is another reason dosing gets messy, and this one is very stack genius. People do not always take vitamin D from one bottle. They might take a multivitamin, then maybe a calcium product that includes vitamin D, then a D3 plus K2 product, then a winter wellness gummy, then an immune blend, and then maybe a sleep product that, for some reason, also decided to join the vitamin D party. Individually, each label may look normal, but together, the stack can be more than the person realizes. That is one of the most common supplement mistakes, evaluating one product at a time while your body receives the total. Your body does not care that the marketing departments were separate. It just sees the total vitamin D. So before you ask, how much vitamin D should I take? The first practical question is, how much am I already taking? That is not glamorous, but it is very useful. Now, D3 versus D2. Vitamin D3 is cholecalciferol, and vitamin D2 is ergocalciferol. You do not need to memorize those words unless you enjoy sounding like you are naming two minor characters in a sci-fi novel. The practical point is that both forms can raise vitamin D levels, but D3 is very common in over-the-counter supplements and is often described as more effective at raising and maintaining vitamin D levels. D2 may still appear in some products or prescription contexts, so if you are shopping on your own, you will probably see D3 most often, and it is worth noticing both the form and the amount. But if a clinician prescribes D2, do not panic because the internet told you D3 is the only real one. Follow the plan you were given. Ask questions if you are unsure, and remember that supplement education should make you calmer, not more suspicious of everything. Next, sunlight versus supplements. People want a clean winner here, like nature or capsule, sun or pill, pick a team. The honest answer is, it depends, which I know is not the most satisfying answer, but vitamin D is really committed to being slightly annoying. Sunlight can help your body produce vitamin D, and that is real. But sunlight is variable, and it comes with skin health trade-offs. Supplements are more controlled. You know the amount, you can take the same amount in January and July, and you can track it. But supplements still need to be used thoughtfully, and they do not replace every benefit of getting outside and being a person with a body in the world. So I would not frame this as sunlight versus supplements. I would frame it as, what is your actual vitamin D status? What is realistic for your life? And what is the safest way to get from here to a better level if you need to? That answer may include sun exposure habits, food, supplements, a blood test, or for some people, all of the above. It is very inconvenient for a one-sentence answer, but much better for real life. Now let's talk about D3 plus K2, because this combination is everywhere. The basic idea is that vitamin D helps with calcium absorption, and vitamin K is involved in proteins that help regulate where calcium goes in the body. That biology is part of why D3 plus K2 gets marketed so heavily. But marketing tends to take a reasonable idea, put a cape on it, and ask for $39.99. D3 plus K2 is not automatically the best product for every person. It is not a guarantee that calcium will behave perfectly, and K2 is not something everyone should ignore as a harmless extra, especially people taking medications where vitamin K matters, like warfarin. So if you see D3 plus K2, the response should not be, magic combo, add to cart. It should be something more like, what dose of D3 is in here? What amount and form of K2? What else am I taking? And is vitamin K relevant to any medication or medical advice I have been given? That is not as catchy as must-have combo, but it is a lot smarter. So what are the benefits of vitamin D? The strongest way to say it is also the least dramatic. Vitamin D supports normal calcium absorption, bone health, muscle function, and immune function. That sentence will not win a viral wellness award, but it is much closer to how I want Stack Genius to talk. If someone is low, correcting low vitamin D may matter a lot for them, and that can be meaningful. But if someone already has adequate vitamin D status, taking more may not make them feel more amazing. That is a big supplement lesson. Sometimes the win is not more. Sometimes the win is enough. And enough is hard to know if you never check your actual status and never add up what you are already taking. Here is the practical version I would use before buying vitamin D or increasing a dose. Start by looking at the whole stack, not just the bottle in your hand. Is vitamin D already in your multivitamin, your calcium supplement, your bone health formula, your immune blend, your winter wellness product, or your D3 plus K2 gummy that tastes suspiciously like candy? Then check the units because IU and micrograms both show up, and for vitamin D, 1 microgram equals 40 IU. Then ask why you are taking it. Is this maintenance? Is it because a blood test showed you are low? Is it because your clinician gave you a plan? Or is it because a video made a high number sound impressive? And if the answer is, I am not sure, that is not a failure. That is the signal to slow down. Ask about a 25OH vitamin D test, and if you have risk factors or you are considering higher doses, bring your actual supplement list to a clinician or pharmacist. The goal is not to make vitamin D complicated. The goal is to stop guessing. So, how much vitamin D should you take? The honest answer is the amount that fits your vitamin D status, your total stack, your health context, and clinician guidance when that applies. I know, that is not as satisfying as a giant universal number, but it is much more useful. Vitamin D is important, deficiency matters, and supplements can help some people. But the goal is not to chase the biggest number on the bottle. The goal is to get enough, avoid unnecessary risk, and understand what you are already taking. Because the label on one bottle is only part of the story. The full story is everything you take together. This has been the Stack Genius Show. Let's keep your stack smarter. If today's episode made you look at your supplement shelf a little differently, that is the whole point. Stack Genius helps you keep track of what you take, spot ingredient overlap, and make your stack easier to understand. Download Stack Genius on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store and start cleaning up the guesswork. Until next time, this is Morgan. Let's stack it up.